It was the beginning of a bright and hopeful future when Chinonso married her soulmate, Emeka. They met in university, a beautiful, intelligent young woman and a charming, ambitious man. Emeka, a dedicated military officer, swept Chinonso off her feet with his calm demeanor and promises of a bright future together. For years, they had planned every step of their lives. The day they said, "I do," felt like the world had fallen into place, and Chinonso believed she had found her forever. In the early days of their marriage, Emeka treated her with love and respect. They moved into a cozy home in the city, and everything seemed perfect. "This is the man I'm meant to be with," Chinonso often told her friends with a smile, as she lovingly packed his lunches and made sure his boots were polished before he left for work. Their house was always filled with laughter, and Chinonso found herself excited to come home after a long day at work, knowing her husband would be there, waiting with a warm hug and sweet words. But as the months passed, the cracks began to appear. It started with small things. Emeka began staying late at work, sometimes coming home after midnight. When he did arrive, he seemed distant, his face cold and full of frustration. Chinonso tried to brush it off, telling herself that it was just the stress of his job. She continued to care for him the way she always had, believing that the good days would return. Then, one evening, it happened. Chinonso was in the living room, scrolling through her phone when she saw a text notification light up on Emeka's phone, which was sitting on the coffee table. She didn't intend to snoop, but the name on the screen caught her eye. Zainab. Zainab? She knew every woman in her husband's life, but this name was unfamiliar. Curiosity got the better of her. She glanced at the message, her heart pounding in her chest as she read the words, "I miss you, baby. Let's meet up tonight." Suddenly, the room felt like it was closing in on her. A deep pit formed in her stomach as she felt the weight of betrayal. She didn't know how long she stared at the message, but when she heard the sound of the door opening, her heart sank. "Emeka, who is Zainab?" she asked, her voice trembling as she tried to remain calm. Emeka froze in the doorway, his face pale, a flicker of guilt in his eyes before he masked it with anger. "What are you talking about?" he growled, his fists clenching. She showed him the phone, the message still on the screen. "Who is she? Why is she texting you like that?" Chinonso's voice cracked with hurt and confusion. He snatched the phone from her hand and threw it across the room. "You have no right to go through my things," he shouted, his voice filled with rage. "You think I'm cheating on you? Well, if you can't trust me, then get out." Chinonso recoiled, her breath catching in her throat. "Emeka, please." Before she could finish, he stormed over to her, grabbing her by the arm and shoving her back. "Get out of my house," he yelled, his voice shaking with fury. "I've had enough of you. Pack your things and leave before I come back." Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked at him, not recognizing the man she had married. But she didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing her broken. Instead, she ran upstairs and locked herself in the bedroom, crying herself to sleep, her heart aching with betrayal. The next day, when Emeka returned home, he was angrier than ever. Chinonso hadn't left, just as he had ordered. But now, something about his presence seemed darker, more threatening. His hands shook as he slammed the door behind him. "I told you to leave," he shouted, his voice rising with fury. Chinonso stood up, her knees weak beneath her. "I'm not leaving. You're the one who's changed, Emeka. You've hurt me, and I don't know who you are anymore." Emeka's eyes flared with anger, and before she could react, he reached for a jerrycan of petrol that was sitting in the corner of the room. He'd been using it for a project in the backyard, but now it seemed to have taken on a new, ominous significance. "I'll burn the house down with you in it, Chinonso," he spat, his voice low and threatening. He gripped the lighter in his hand, the flame flickering dangerously as he held it close to the jerrycan. Chinonso stepped back, her heart racing in fear. She opened her mouth to say something, but before she could, the worst happened. The jerrycan tipped over, and in a split second, petrol spilled all over the floor, splashing on Emeka's feet. In his blind rage, he didn't notice. The lighter, still in his hand, slipped from his fingers and fell to the ground, igniting the petrol with a deafening burst of flames. Emeka screamed as the fire engulfed him, his body writhing in pain as the flames licked at his skin. Chinonso froze, her mind unable to process what was happening. She watched in horror as he struggled, helpless to stop it. "Emeka!" she screamed, rushing toward him, but the fire was too intense. She knew she had to get out. She couldn't save him. In a panic, she bolted from the house, her heart pounding as she ran down the street screaming for help. But by the time anyone arrived, the fire had consumed everything. They managed to rescue Emeka, barely alive, but he was burned beyond recognition. As he was rushed to the hospital, the police arrived at the scene. They looked at Chinonso, who was standing in a daze, her clothes singed, her face streaked with tears. "You did this," one of the officers said, his tone accusing. "You set him on fire. We're arresting you for attempted murder." Chinonso's heart dropped. She tried to explain, but the words wouldn't come. The police didn't listen to her. They saw only a woman standing next to the burned remains of her husband. They didn't see the years of emotional abuse. They didn't see the bruises, the fear, the pain she had endured in silence. As Emeka lay in the hospital, fighting for his life, he refused to press charges against Chinonso. His wounds were severe, but his pride was even worse. He wanted to clear her name, but the damage had already been done. The police saw her as the culprit, and the world began to believe the story they told. Weeks passed. Emeka's condition remained critical, and Chinonso was locked up in a cell, her hands cuffed, her mind racing. She knew she hadn't caused the fire, but no one believed her. The truth was buried under accusations and assumptions. The police station was cold, the metal bars of the holding cell clanging as the door was slammed shut behind Chinonso. Her hands were bound, the rough cuffs biting into her wrists. Her heart was a storm of fear, confusion, and frustration. How had it come to this? Just hours before, she had been running through the streets, screaming for help as the house went up in flames. Emeka was lying in the hospital, battling for his life, and Chinonso had been accused of setting him on fire. The very man who had promised to love her, the man who had destroyed everything they had built together, was now the one who might have taken her freedom away forever. She had tried to explain. She had tried to tell them the truth that her husband had pushed the petrol, that it was his anger, his rage, that had sparked the disaster. But the officers didn't believe her. They saw her standing by the flames, saw her running out of the burning house, and assumed she was guilty. The rest of the story, the years of abuse, the secret betrayals, the broken trust, didn't matter to them. They only saw a woman who had been caught in a terrible lie. Chinonso sat on the cold bench in the cell, her face buried in her hands. She had been through so much, and now, it felt like the world was collapsing around her. She had tried to be strong, but this was too much. Emeka, the man she had loved and married, had betrayed her in the worst possible way. Now, even in his hospital bed, he was still trying to control her, trying to place the blame on her. She had to fight back. In the hospital, Emeka lay in a bed, his face covered in bandages, his body a mass of burns and blisters. He had been unconscious for days, his condition so severe that even the doctors were unsure if he would survive. But when he finally woke up, he demanded to speak to the police. The police had been hesitant at first, unsure if Emeka was fit to talk, but when they saw his condition, severe but not critical, they allowed him to speak with a lawyer present. The pain from the burns didn't seem to faze him. Emeka was stubborn, determined, and he had one thing in mind: his wife. "I need to speak to her," he told the police, his voice raspy but full of emotion. "I know what happened. I can't let her suffer because of what I did." At the station, Chinonso was pacing in the small cell, trying to clear her head. The night was long, and she had no idea what would happen when the morning came. It had been hours since she had last seen Emeka, but the thought of him brought mixed emotions: guilt, anger, sorrow, and, most painfully, love. Despite everything he had done, despite the way he had hurt her, part of her still cared for him. That was the curse of love. It lingered, even when it shouldn't. Suddenly, the door to the cell opened, and a police officer stepped in. "Chinonso, you're needed. The hospital called. Emeka has requested to speak with you." Chinonso's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected this. She didn't know what he would say, but she knew this would be a turning point. Either he would keep her locked in this nightmare, or he would finally tell the truth. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself as she followed the officer down the corridor to the interrogation room. She was being led into the lion's den, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for what awaited her. When she entered the hospital room, she saw Emeka lying on the bed, his face a mess of bandages. His once proud, confident figure was now reduced to a broken man. His eyes, though still held the same fire. They locked onto hers as she entered. "Chinonso," he whispered, his voice cracking from the pain. "I know what you're thinking, but please hear me out." Chinonso stood at the foot of the bed, her arms crossed over her chest. "What do you want to say, Emeka? After everything that's happened?" she asked, her voice steady, though her heart was racing. Emeka winced as he tried to sit up. He could barely move, but his face was full of regret. "I've made terrible mistakes," he said, his voice breaking. "I never should have treated you the way I did. I hurt you, Chinonso, and I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I need you to know the truth." He paused, gathering his thoughts, as if the words were difficult to speak. "I was angry, so angry. When I saw your face, I wanted to lash out. When you confronted me about the message from Zainab, I lost control. I pushed the jerrycan of petrol in the corner, not realizing the danger. When I reached for the lighter, I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did. It caught the petrol, and it caught me." Chinonso's breath caught in her throat. She had known all along that he was the one responsible for the fire, but hearing it from him was different. The words were like poison, but they were also a kind of relief. "But why, Emeka? Why lie? Why accuse me?" Chinonso's voice trembled. "I tried to help you. I tried to love you, but you turned against me. You never cared about me. You only cared about yourself." Emeka looked away, ashamed. "I was afraid, Chinonso. I didn't want to admit the truth, even to myself. You don't understand. I've been running from my own mistakes for years, and I thought if I could control you, I could keep everything from falling apart. But it did. And now I'm sorry. I am so sorry." Tears began to fill Chinonso's eyes. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Emeka. I don't know if I ever will. You hurt me, and you hurt yourself. You destroyed everything, including us." Emeka reached out weakly, his hand trembling. "Please, Chinonso, don't let me die without you knowing the truth. I was wrong. I pushed the petrol. I set the fire. I'm asking you to forgive me. I don't deserve it, but I need you to know that I was the one who caused it. Not you. Please, forgive me." The officers arrived in the room, interrupting their conversation. The officer who had arrested Chinonso entered with a stern look on his face. "Chinonso, we need to take your statement. You're being released, but you're still under investigation. Emeka has asked for your release, but you'll still need to answer questions." As Chinonso turned to leave the room, Emeka's voice stopped her. "I never meant for any of this to happen, Chinonso. Please, believe me. When I get better, I'll make things right." Days passed. Chinonso's heart ached as she sat in her cell, the memories of Emeka's words weighing heavily on her. He had finally admitted the truth, but was it too late? Could she forgive him for everything he had done? When she was released from custody, the city was in a frenzy. The news had spread, and people were talking about the fire, the accusations, and the redemption that had followed. Emeka's truth had come out, but would anyone believe it now? As the investigation continued, Emeka's condition worsened. The burns were too much for his body to handle. He had lost too much blood, and his body couldn't heal. He passed away in the hospital after several days of intense struggle. His family, friends, and even the police officers were left with a sense of unresolved grief and shock. But for Chinonso, the truth was now clear. Emeka had been a broken man, struggling with his own demons, and despite the pain he had caused her, she knew he had truly repented before his death. She had been falsely accused of something she didn't do, but the weight of his apology was now the only thing that mattered. In the aftermath of Emeka's death, Chinonso faced the world with a new strength. The police released her, but the rumors about her role in the fire still lingered. Some people believed her, others did not, but she had learned a valuable lesson. Love shouldn't come at the cost of your own peace, and no one should ever be made to feel like they have to endure pain for the sake of someone else's pride. Chinonso took the time to heal, not just from the trauma of the fire, but from the wounds that had been inflicted over the years. She started a new life, finding her purpose and a sense of peace she had never known before. She vowed to never again lose herself in someone else's darkness. And though she would always carry the scar of what happened, she was determined to never let it define her. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thrilling tales. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing from you. And stay tuned for the next chapter of our incredible story.